there's much optimism sweeping the USA, and everyone should enjoy that. And it's good. There's waves, and not just economic, but cultural too. People are getting back in touch with what this country is, and they're becoming more patriotic, or they're bringing that back again, and they're feeling more comfortable in their own country, which is good. And when it comes to the immigration issue, though, you have to face it from a more realistic point of view, and realistic sometimes seems negative, but the thing is that we've tried the positive or the look the other way approach for the past 50 years, and now we're in a corner with it. We're losing our history and culture because of that, and so that's one thing that you can't be too optimistic about, I think. And so I've waited for a little bit of time to pass for the immigration and to say all that much about it, because there's no need to disrupt the optimism in all the other areas, and in the other areas that are back to life that you didn't even know existed, and all these records, and a lot of departments haven't been this good since Nixon was in, and some of them haven't been since Reagan was in. And if you look at the way both of them did stuff, you see sort of a combination now, and so that shows that it works. It worked then and it works now. And a lot of course, the media and the elites, the establishment, they know that, because that wasn't so long ago, and they keep track of it, so they know that worked too. And there's just record numbers. Even with them tanking the stock market, it still manages to get itself back up. And the jobs in general, and all the bonuses that even the liberal tech companies and everybody's giving out, and that still is not affected by that. And all these little things. I read the other day that Trump's wanting to bring the legal immigration, which to me it's get into why, but a more important issue than the illegal. So the legal, he's trying to get it down to numbers that were like in the 1920s. So he wants to have as few people enter as then. And other than that, there were times when it was shut down to where none immigrated, and those were prosperous times, because, as I've said a lot, but people don't see it, we're full, and you're once a nation of immigrants. Now that we're all here, and we all built it up, and we all left our handprint on it, we don't need any more help with it. And so he's trying to bring it down to as little as possible to get the country in order, and to let everybody here have what's theirs instead of bringing more in. And so that's one thing. And the refugee program has been cut drastically. There's been a lot fewer, and the illegal aliens have crossed at a lower rate. They're afraid to come. They were told not to come, and they see even these random deportations, such as last week. This guy has been here for 30 years, and he's getting deported. And, I mean, it doesn't matter how long you've been here. I don't know why some have this thought that if you've been here X amount of time, then you're good or something. No, that just means you're luckier than the next guy, because you hid out for decades. You didn't get caught, and now you're finally caught. You should go first if you've been here the longest. So there's a lot of that. So then immigration, little by little, or little parts of it, even is something to be somewhat optimistic about. And making sure everybody that's in here assimilates. And I'm sure that's why he doesn't want more people in, doesn't want too many. He wants the the merit-based and also just have it harder anyway. I mean, it can be as hard or as easy as what we want. And the key word is we. And a lot of people, even that mean well, they're kind of used to, they're just living and they're looking towards something. They're looking towards the government. And so they kind of like, they have the disconnect that they don't think that they have any kind of say really, that they're just here, and that's how it had been for a long time. But maybe more so with this president involving everyone, just even with telling people what he's doing pretty much each hour, what he's going to, how it went, and being more hands-on, bringing regular people in, and doing things like within the first 2 months that he was in there, he sent a couple million to fix that Flint water problem, and I heard that some people got sick from the water recently, and well, the thing is, he gives it to them, then it's on them to fix it, and it's too bad he has so much else to do that he can't just constantly check on each little thing to make sure it's going exactly to this. So, I mean, he can designate that, and then it's up to other people to watch to make sure that it gets carried out. And it obviously didn't, but that doesn't mean that they didn't get it, that he didn't try. And so with the more hands-on like that, I think it's making more people realize that they're the government, they're the country, that the government should protect us from foreign invaders, hence the immigration problem. And the government should have a good military, and there's things that it's needed for, but otherwise it's the people that have the say and all. And I think most people would be okay with having the immigration cut to those levels, which it's already headed towards anyway. It's getting less. And have the good people here, have the ones that are best to come and stay, because we're not an experiment. And as Tucker says, diversity is not our strength. And at first, hearing that, you might think it sounds harsh, but he didn't mean it like as in a negative towards that. He just meant it as we're not this experiment to see what can exist, like who can exist around who. It's you bring in the best people, or you have the best people here, you all assimilate, and we have to, as he says, have something in common, have common culture, common language, common history. And then a lot of people, it's shame we don't have that, but we do have that. The language is English here in this country. That's what we all speak, and that's what we should be required to speak before coming if you're not from here. And he just meant that the strength of this country pretty much is the people already here, is its history, is its values. Just like the military, they don't have to allow certain people in, including if you have flat feet or some kind of problem, because diversity or an experiment isn't the military's goal. The military's goal is to be the strongest. And so that's all that's about. But as I was saying, a lot of pretty much anything else, a lot's getting better. And I remember a few months ago there was talk of the military parade, and then last week it was mentioned again. And when I first heard about it, I thought, sure, I thought that sounds good. We can get on board with that. Why not? And then within a day, there was this pushback and this backlash, and the Antifa people said they'd get out under the tanks and saying that it was barbaric, and that there's no need to do that. There's no need to show strength. So that made me really realize we need one of those yesterday. I mean, who would oppose showing how strong this is? And the more I think about it, how neat would that be to have tanks, to have soldiers marching, to have those military, those Humvees, and all the different cars, different flags, different people, to have veterans, have it all out there. Why not? Have a big display like that. Like, the one that Trump went to in France, that looked nice, and he enjoyed that one. They had an air show with it, and a huge parade, a huge celebration, and it was a nice thing, and it showed off that they were strong. Why would anybody oppose that? The more I see that people do, and these college professors trying to spread fear about how bad it is and such, it made it sound even better. So now I'm glad that that's going to be done, and it seems like it's definite at some point. Not sure if it's around Independence Day or just sometime. Some suggest that we should bring some troops back and have them be in it as a celebration, and I think most are for that too. Most are just for having a parade like that. We've had those before, but it's just been decades since. And just for the reason to celebrate and to have it be so strong, and to have the military commanders so strong too, that they can just take all the emotion out and just be so tough. Like they say that they pity if the draft comes back because these weak millennial men, they can't even lift their bags. They'd have a hard time with that. Other than how weak everyone's gotten, I don't think the draft's too bad of an idea. But yeah, that would be kind of hard today. But having the parade, that sounds better and better. And there's more and more talk of it. And I can see it getting planned and having it like a big thing. And funnily enough, the ones that are so opposed to it, they're out parading around whenever they feel like it, having costumes, bothering people, throwing trash, often getting violent, and no permit, of course, so they can take up whole streets to demonstrate, like on the January 20th anniversary parades, where some were having the pink hats, some were angry about the hats, and others were just out celebrating the recovery and the optimism. And it was a nice weekend throughout the country, so there were a lot of reasons that people were out. And you can be out and about like that in this free country, which is a good thing. So why would they try to stop the military from being out also? And they compare it to dictatorship countries, and no, these aren't out to police. They're out to just show off. Show off how strong they are, and to honor the military, to honor the veterans, to put some morale for the soldiers. That's all that's about. It's actually worth something. But again, in this country, you can be out for any reason, and apparently especially if you're in the opposition, a permit really isn't enforced at all. It isn't needed. However, if you're in the alt-right, you need about 10 permits, a year's notice, and you'll probably still get attacked and blamed for even having anything. So these ones are so lucky to be able to have the privilege of doing that anytime, so they shouldn't stop others from doing it. But of course they do, since they don't like the military. It wore off. They liked it for a while when some of their communities were banned from joining it. And that's another thing. It's so hard to implement stuff that hasn't been implemented. So if they want free surgery, they can still join, but you can't join still if you have flat feet, if you need an inhaler for anything, even if you don't need it a lot, but even if you need it like after running 20 miles, you can't do it. I mean, but you've got to like have some kind of mental illness if you're not sure if you're a person of the opposite sex or not. But yet you can still join. I think that can be a little dangerous for a whole lot of reasons, not to mention that it costs a lot. But they still allow that, so people backed off of being interested in the military for the time. So there's a lot of other things that are needed to get passed, that are like more of the gun laws, like less restrictions on that, and a lot of other things. And the immigration, it's still going. But I mean, I'm even surprised, I guess, a bit about how strong that our president is about this DACA thing. Last week, he gave a speech saying, don't let people fool you about those terms dreamers. He says, I have a lot of dreamers to take care of here in this country. That's not dreamers. That's just a term that was given to these people. And that's true. They try to give some cutesy name, and they think that it'll guilt people, and they see that it's not working, and they're probably doubling down because they see that's not working, and they see most of the country doesn't want them here. They're of no use. You hear about crime that they've committed all the time, and they demonstrate, and they wave their own home country's flag, and I see why they do it, honestly, and that's because they really have a connection with their culture back home. Even if they were brought at 2 years old, or even if they were anchor babies and had here their first generation because their parents leaped across the line, their belonging, their heritage, who they really are is back there. So I can see why they can act up here, because they don't really feel at home, and it has nothing to do with how the people whose country this is treating them. I mean, if they want to say for a second they're not treated well, we can say, well, you're here illegally. The fact that you're even here, the fact that you've gotten an education, the fact that you got clothes on your back here, the fact that you have all this insurance and all this stuff and all this government help. I mean, so you can't say that. I mean, if people utter some words about you, then so be it. It's a free country and we have free speech, and that's what's going to happen when you act so entitled and try to wreck things here. But you're given all this kinds of stuff, and then you complain about it. And when people are just so tired of it, you double down, and then we double down. And so most of the country doesn't want that, and I think that Trump's got that message from not only because he keeps up to date on Twitter. I mean, each tweet gets like millions of replies, but I mean, he sees the keywords. I wouldn't even be surprised if there's a way to scan for keywords. And so when you put like the hashtag like no DACA, and I mean, he sees that, he knows what the base wants and what most people even want. Most people, if you look at even these surveys, they don't want them to stay anymore. They're getting tired of it being such a hot issue that takes precedence. And I think he is too. And really, for the first time last week, he looked upset about it. And he's always strong, but he just seemed like just frustrated, like it's just enough of this. And today he said, after there was that shutdown that only lasted for an hour or so, the middle of the night, I didn't even know about it. And then there were on social media some titles, headlines saying that it's the second shutdown. And I thought that, and I was surprised at first. It was like, wow, another shutdown, but then it had already ended hours before, so it was real short. But I mean, like he had said that he wouldn't mind shutting it down over this. He's getting tired of it. But then he said today, he said that tweeted that it's good that they reached a deal for the military. And he said, fortunately, DACA is not part of this, because he just knows that we're just tired of that. So what I hope is going to happen is that when this March 5th deadline comes up, and it was nice of him to give 6 months for an unconstitutional program that no other country would allow anyway. They give them 6 more months here, and during that time there was crimes committed, there's protests, there's disrespect, so you had extra time to do all that. And then hopefully at this time, that's it. And the White House said that they're not going to extend the deadline, but that they won't target the Dreamers for deportation. And okay, I mean, I'm okay with sending the like, they call them criminals. Anyone here illegal's already a criminal, but the violent criminals, I'm for sending them out first and not giving them any kind of trial here, or not housing them in jail. That costs a lot. It costs less to put them back. So I'm for getting rid of them first, but I mean, then eventually everyone's got to get rounded up, and you got to get that out of the way first before you can start on any kind of barrier to stop them from coming in. and you got to have better security in the meantime too, so none come in. They have helicopters and more guards, different tools that they utilize for that. And the border security said that they're really glad that they're able to do their job, but they also told him, but don't cave on any of this. Don't forget about this, because we're counting on you. And they do want the wall, as do most. But I think you can start it. It'll take a while, but you got to get others out first for a couple of reasons. And one's obvious. It seems like the longer people stay, the longer they stay. And also, just to get the message back to every American that that's just not how it is. You come over here illegally, you don't get citizenship no matter what. Be like every other country that sends them right back. So people don't think differently. The mindset's kind of odd. I even see these people that come to the Breitbart comments, and they mean well, but they say things like, well, such and such has been here for 15 years, and he never thought of becoming legal. My question is, what? That's not how it works. What you do is you wait 15 years on the other side, and maybe you come in. You don't sneak in here and then apply for citizenship and then do it. How's that? That's not acceptable. But a lot of people say things like that, like, well, they've been here X amount of years, they never thought of becoming legal, and they're saying that about the Dreamers too, which I blame the government even more for setting up a program for that, where some dreamer that's been in here can go and apply for citizenship instead of leaving, and if they really are one of the handful that loves this country, its history, and isn't coming to change it, wants to come back, go through the process that way. But many, even conservatives, are okay with people becoming legal once they get here. No, that's not legal. You're illegal. You go. You can't be trusted here. You came here illegally. You're sneaky. You can't, if we have to bring in people, bring in the ones that didn't do that suffered back there, and that are waiting. That kind of mindset's going to have to go. So that's one reason everyone has to leave. And the other reason is that no wall, as we've seen, has to be permanent. Don't even really want to say this, but what if one of these days that they want to melt it down or explode it, or you just never know. And that's a reason not to be so optimistic and to be realistic, because you want to keep things going as they are now. And you don't want things to change and get that way. But if it ever does become a party that's in power that wants to do that and does that, you have to have us in such the mindset that we won't allow these border crossings, that we won't allow this crime, that we won't allow things to get to where they are now. So even if the wall were to come down, that it wouldn't change much, that it would be more like it was back in 1940. There'd be so few crossings, and there'd be this kind of, this patriotism, this love for the country, and this wanting to keep outsiders out. That's what it is. I don't care how bigoted that sounds these days to people, but to keep those out, to keep those safe in, and there'll be that. And if we can get to that mindset, then people will pay more attention, and they'll make sure that there's not the fraud, so that those ones don't get back into power. And that's why people do need to pay more attention. They need to pay more attention to what the globalists are doing, what they're about, because they don't play fair, they don't play honest, and they'll do anything to get back into power. So people have to watch out for that. Like, they talk a lot about the 2018 elections, and I see some good people, and one of these people, that his name's Tom Campbell, and he lives in North Dakota. He's been running for about half a year. He works 20 hours a day campaigning, and he's been supporting Trump's agenda since before it was popular. And he announced he was going to run at the weekend of the Charlottesville incident, and he got flack for that. And he says, well, why not announce it now? There's nothing we can do about that. We have to move on to things that we can do. It takes two to tango. And since they were kind of afraid of somebody that strong, they dismissed him and said he wasn't in the race, and they still don't mention him even though he has been in. He's running unopposed. And so if all's fair, I mean, that's the kind of people that they would put in. So that's why the voting, the fraudulent voting is going to have to be what's looked at more, and going to have to push for the IDs. And apparently the blue states wouldn't hand their records over, but there's going to have to be something. We can't just go on always having this uncertainty, not needing any identification, letting anybody vote. I mean, we can't do that, because you want your vote to count. You become involved and you become informed. You don't want to get cheated. You don't want someone's vote to count for half in the machine and someone's to count for two, and all this kind of fraud. And so that's what people have to realize goes on, and look for that more. And I'm not sure how, but I hope that becomes something that we're all more aware of, because that's what has probably happened. Like Sheriff Joe's running in Arizona. He'd be great in there, and they're trying to stop him already left and right, and he's not giving up. That's one thing that they hate. And so if all was with no fraud, a lot like that would be in. And they would support this agenda more. And that's what Trump needs, is more people that support the America First agenda, because he's sticking to it. And right now, even through this tough times with the immigration, he's really sticking to it and doing a lot else. And then he has this kind of endurance for that, and he's not giving up. And that's just amazing to see that kind of leadership. And I think a lot of people are amazed by that, and people in other countries are too. Like Justin Trudeau was also upset a couple days ago, but that was because people said mankind instead of people kind, and people kind isn't even a word, but that's where they're at with that kind of stuff. And people there want this kind of leadership as this. They want this strong leadership, and they want to trade him for Trump there, because they're seeing what's going on here, and then they're seeing what the contrast is. And most people like this. Most people like what Trump's doing and how he's doing it. How he just non-apologetic. Most people like that because they know that he's strong enough to have people's backs, that they can relax a bit. They can breathe a sigh of relief, and they don't have to worry. They feel safe like that. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more, with that immigration being the toughest thing for some reason. But he's just not giving up on it. Like with the Americans are dreamers too, and the next day there were already t-shirts with that, and all kinds of the bumper stickers, things you could buy that said that, and everybody was writing that. That was one of the best quotes from that night. And so it's overall a good time. So it's good to enjoy this kind of positivity and this optimism. And then I'd say to be realistic about the things that we have to be realistic about in order to preserve this country as we know it. And as most people, as I pleasantly see, want to. Most from the comments and more of what he's saying and other politicians are saying, they're focusing on the culture, the history too, and that's refreshing, honestly, to see. And I hope that it continues like that, where it focuses on that, as well as that the country's booming in every way.